Hello everyone, Stephanie DeLeon here, Miss Maricopa County 2020. Welcome back to another episode of Miss SPMC's There She Reads. I hope you all enjoyed our last series about diversity and inclusion. I know all the girls and I had so much fun reading for you all. Congratulations to all the giveaway winners, and the person that won the book that I read last time, The Day You Begin, is Kaylin Buffard. Congratulations, and I will be contacting you shortly. Now, without further ado, introducing our new series, Women in History. Women have done some amazing things throughout time to change the world for the better, and I'm here today to remind you all, especially young girls, that you are able to accomplish anything you set your heart to with a little bit of determination, resilience, and hard work. So in honor of Women in History, today I will be reading Fantastically Great Women Who Made History by Kate Pankhurst. Travel through some fantastically great history with Harriet Tubman, Boudica, Flora Drummond, Q Jin, Noor Inayat Khan, Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell, Pocahontas, Valentina Tereshkova, Ada Lovelace, Sadiya Al-Hurra, Hatshepsut, Josephine Baker, Mary Wollstonecraft, Mary Shelley. How did they become so fantastically amazing and great? To make history, you need to be brave, bold, and believe in yourself, just like the women in this book. They lived in times when women weren't expected to have big ideas, be in charge, or to have exciting ambitions, but that didn't stop them. Their extraordinary deeds and words didn't just make history, they helped to shape the way we live today. Read on and prepare to be inspired. Harriet Tubman. Born Araminta Ross around 1820 in the slave state of Maryland, USA, changed her identity to Harriet Tubman when she escaped. She has shamelessly made repeated trips to Maryland between 1850 and 1860 to help many more slaves run away. Like many other African Americans in the South of the USA in the 1800s, Harriet Tubman and her family were slaves. This meant that they were the property of a rich white household. To make money for themselves, owners forced slaves to work long hours on land and in their homes with no payment. Harriet dreamed of a better life. After hearing stories of slaves escaping north to free states where slavery was outlawed, Harriet tried to persuade her family to run away with her. But they were too scared of being caught and punished. Even though Harriet was scared too, in 1849, she decided that freedom was worth the risk. Follow the tracks to freedom. Runaway slaves like Harriet were helped to freedom by the Underground Railroad. Though this sounds like a railway, it was actually a network of safe routes north. Underground meant that it was top secret. It was set up by people, white and black, who wanted to put an end to slavery. They were called abolitionists. Traveling at night meant less chance of being caught. Harriet had to be careful to stay hidden from slave catchers. Directions were given by conductors, and hiding places known as stops were offered in safe houses run by station masters. When Harriet reached the free state of Pennsylvania, she was, for the first time in her life, a free woman. But without her friends and family, Harriet felt lonely. She decided to use her freedom to help other slaves to freedom and became an Underground Railroad conductor. In 1850, the Fugitive Slave Act was introduced in order to make it harder for slaves to find freedom in the USA, even in free states, but this didn't stop Harriet. She guided her passengers further, into Canada, to find safety. Reward. By 1860, a reward was being offered for Harriet's capture. Because of this, Harriet had to give up being an Underground Railroad conductor, but she found new ways to fight for freedom. During the American Civil War, Harriet served as a nurse and a spy, even leading a military expedition. Harriet's brave deeds helped to ensure that one day, all slaves would be free. And at the end of the war, in 1863, slavery was abolished. Boudica. Boudica was queen of the Celtic Iceni tribe during the Roman invasion of Britain in 43 AD. The Celts believed that women would be strong leaders, and with her fearless attitude, wild hair, and brutal battle skills, Boudica was a brave and powerful leader who inspired terror in all who met her. The Roman army made a mighty mistake when, simply because she was a woman, they underestimated Boudica. Follow the spirits to track Boudica's battle against Rome. Lands of the Iceni tribe. In 59 AD, Boudica's husband died, and she was left to rule alone. The Romans thought the idea of a female ruler was ridiculous, and so told Boudica they were in charge. Boudica resisted, and as a result, she and her daughters were treated very cruelly. The Romans thought they had scared Boudica off, but rawr, they couldn't have been more wrong. Enraged by the injustice of what had happened to her and her people, Boudica gathered a fearsome army of Iceni and Trinavante soldiers, a neighboring tribe. First, Boudica ordered them to attack the Roman town of Camula Donum. They showed no mercy, destroying a temple built in honor of the Roman emperor and setting buildings alight. Next, they wreaked havoc on Londinium, the Roman town that later became London. Then Boudica marched on the Roman town of Verulamium, causing more chaos. Boudica's ferocious army took the Romans by surprise. Her uprising was threatening their hold on Britain. When the rebels and the Roman army finally came face to face, Boudica inspired her army to fight bravely, but this time they were defeated. No one knows for sure what happened to Boudica. Some think that rather than be captured by the Romans, Boudica poisoned herself. Other accounts say she didn't survive the battle. One thing is certain, mighty Boudica wasn't afraid to defend her people and their way of life. That is why, 2,000 years later, her legend lives on. March proudly with courageous suffragette, Flora Drummond. Flora Drummond was born in Manchester, England in 1878 and grew up in Scotland. Flora wanted to become a postmistress, but because of a rule which said that all postmasters and mistresses must be at least 5 foot 2 inches tall, she was told she was too short to do the job. Flora was outraged. The rule didn't take into account that women are often shorter than men. Her height had nothing to do with how good she would have been at her job. Standing tall, Flora decided to fight for fairer rights for working women, and in 1906 she joined the WSPU, Women's Social and Political Union. Women in the WSPU were called suffragettes. They fought for the law to be changed so that women had the right to vote and have a say in how the country was run. This way, sister suffragettes, follow Flora. Come on, girls. Quickly, Flora became a leading figure in the WSPU. She was known as the General because she was so skilled at organizing and inspiring her fellow suffragettes to do all they could to get votes for women. The government tried its best to ignore the suffragette campaign, but Flora made that very difficult for them to do indeed. March 9, 1906. Suffragette in 10 Downing Street. Security was breached at the home of Britain's Prime Minister by prominent suffragette Flora Drummond. While a fellow suffragette distracted police, Flora rushed inside before being promptly ejected. Her brazen intention was to hand out information about the Votes for Women campaign to the Prime Minister himself. I'm obliged to do nothing at all about women getting the vote. You can keep persisting, though. That's that little guy right there. 5th of October, 1907. Suffragettes marched on Scotland. A crowd of 10,000 cheering onlookers lined the street to witness the spectacle of Scotland's first march in the name of women's rights. The procession was made up of around 1,000 suffragettes and was expertly organized and led by Scottish suffragette Flora Drummond. June 21st, 1908. The General set sail for Parliament. There were shocking scenes on the River Thames today as Flora Drummond found another inventive method to force cabinet ministers to listen to the suffragette message. Unsuspecting ministers who were enjoying tea on the riverside terrace of the Houses of Parliament were unable to ignore Mrs. Drummond's shouts as she sailed past on a barge, inviting them to join a suffragette march in London's Hyde Park. We will not be ignored. Our voices will be heard. The wind is blowing. Flora's heroic attitude, enthusiasm, and efficient organizing skills played a huge part in leading women towards the equality they deserved. And in 1918, the right to vote was given to some women aged over 21. Now the vote is 18. That's really cool. Qiujin. Qiujin was born in China in 1875. The way people lived in China had not changed for generations, and this meant that, like most Chinese girls, Qiujin was forced to follow many outdated traditions. One of the harshest of these traditions was foot binding. Small feet were considered to be beautiful, so young girls' feet were broken and tightly bound to make them as tiny as possible. This meant every step could be painful. Most girls were not well educated, but Qiujin was from a wealthy family, and her parents allowed her to study the same subjects as her brother. The more books Qiujin read, the more questions she had about the unfair way women were treated. Wisdom gave Qiujin the words to stand up for change. Qiujin sometimes went by different names. Du Shujinjan meant read books, practice sword. The power of words. At the time, it was shocking for a woman to speak her mind, but Qiujin wrote powerful poems, passionate articles, and gave captivating speeches about the struggles women faced, shaking off the tradition that held her back. Qiujin unbound her feet, and in order to experience the same feeling of freedom men did, began to wear men's clothing. The power of knowledge. In search of more inspiring wisdom, Qiujin traveled to Japan to study where women were treated with more respect. Once there, she joined people who believed that the only way to make China a fairer place to live was to get rid of the old-fashioned government they had ruled for centuries, the Qing dynasty. A wise warrior, Qiu Jin moved back to China, where in 1906 she took a job at the head of a school. Her job was to secretly prepare students to rebel against the government. She led women in exercise classes, something very new, so they would be physically fit enough to fight. Final words of wisdom. In 1907, Qiu Jin was warned that the government suspected she was involved in plotting against them. Qiu Jin knew that anybody caught plotting faced giving up their life, but she allowed herself to be captured. Wise and brave Qiu Jin wrote a final poem explaining that by sacrificing her life, she was making the ultimate stand for what she believed in. These actions made her a hero in China, inspired other women to play an active role in the revolution of 1911, which successfully forced out China's Qing dynasty. Afterwards, women were able to live more equal and fulfilled lives. Qiu Jin always found the right words, and although her life was tragically cut short, her wisdom lives on. Noor Enyat Khan, top secret memo from Britain's SOE, Special Operations Executive, May 1943. Dear Noor, you have proved yourself to be a skilled wireless radio operator for the WAAF and are fluent in French and English. We need people with skills like these to work as undercover agents, sending messages to a network of spies working for Britain in Paris. This network is known as Operation Prosper. Your superiors tell us that before the war, you worked as a children's book author. This makes you an unlikely candidate for the very different work of being a secret agent, but we have been told you are keen to offer your skills to help win the war. This is a very brave decision. If captured, the German police, the Gestapo, will show no mercy. Regards, SOE. P.S. Your codename is Madeline. This name is taken from a character in the book of traditional Indian children's stories you wrote. Occupation. First female wireless operator to be sent into Nazi-occupied France during First female wireless operator to be sent into Nazi-occupied France during World War II. Background. Noor's father was descended from Indian royalty and her mother was American. She grew up with a strong belief in fairness and tolerance of people's differences. This was precisely why, after being forced to flee the invading German army in her home in Paris, France, and go to Britain, Noor decided to join the WAAF, Women's Auxiliary Air Force, a radio operator to support the British flight of freedom against the Nazis. Agents hid their radio equipment in suitcases. This meant that they could send messages from different locations and avoid detection. Coded messages were sent using Morse code, a series of dots and dashes. Messages from Madeline, May 1943. London, do you receive me, London? I've been in Paris for just 72 hours, but I've located radio equipment in the greenhouse of a fellow spy. July 1943. Disaster! Operation Prosper has been compromised. Many agents have been arrested. I'm the only radio operator left in Paris. Don't try and persuade me to return to Britain. I intend to do whatever it takes to keep communications open. September 1943. The Gestapo are desperate to catch me. I have to be very careful, as they are driving around Paris with radio signal detection equipment hidden in bakeries and laundry vans. The average time a radio operator avoided capture was just 6 weeks. I managed to work in Paris for 5 months. Mission report. Noor sent over 20 messages to London that helped to evacuate airmen who had been stranded in France. But in October 1943, the Gestapo tracked her down. Calling upon incredible inner strength, Noor resisted arrest, made daring attempts to escape from prison, and refused to give away any secrets. Tragically, Noor did not survive being a prisoner of war. Her incredible efforts were acknowledged with the highest honor for bravery, the George Cross. Noor was one of the most remarkable agents of World War II. Her work showed that in extreme situations, ordinary people are capable of extraordinary things. Trust her, she's a doctor. Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell, the first woman ever to be awarded a degree in medicine. Trust me, I shall become a doctor. Elizabeth was born in England in 1821, but grew up in the USA. Before the age of 24, Elizabeth had never considered studying medicine. Doctors discussed illness in the body, but these were thought to be highly unladylike things for a woman to study. But things changed when one of Elizabeth's friends became ill. People found it extremely embarrassing to talk about their bodies, and Elizabeth's friend wished she could have been treated by a female doctor. She thought that Elizabeth, who was studious and hardworking, would be an excellent doctor. At first, Elizabeth couldn't imagine such a thing, but after more thought, she realized that women deserved to feel more comfortable with who was treating them. Just because there were no women doctors didn't mean there shouldn't be. Elizabeth learned many important lessons on her journey to becoming a doctor. Elizabeth was rejected by 29 medical schools until 1847. Geneva Medical School in New York State, USA, offered her a place. Why would we let you study here? You'll steal patients from male doctors. We'll let you study here if you disguise yourself as a man. Ha ha ha, are you joking? I'm going to medical school. Figure 2. When Elizabeth started at medical school, she discovered that her fellow students had been asked to vote on whether a woman should join the course. They didn't think a woman would actually ever turn up and voted yes as a joke. And then she's saying, I must prove a woman can do this. Figure 3. Elizabeth studied hard. Her classmates and professors soon realized she was no joke. In 1845, Elizabeth became the first woman to be awarded a medical degree, graduating top of her class. At first, nobody would give up a job. So, Elizabeth traveled to Paris, France to gain experience. Then in 1857, Elizabeth opened a doctor where women were treated by female doctors, the New York Infirmary for Women and Children. She also taught at top medical schools and founded a medical college for women. The pioneering work women did made it easier for patients to talk about their bodies, paved the way for other women to be doctors, and shaped the healthcare we receive today. Elizabeth showed everyone that women make very good choices indeed. Very good doctors indeed. Pocahontas. Pocahontas was born around 1595 and was the daughter of the chief of the Powhatan Native American tribe who lived on the eastern coast of what is now Virginia, USA. The way Pocahontas and her people lived changed forever when ships from Britain arrived in 1606. The people aboard, known as colonists, called America the New World. They wanted to farm the land and set up towns or colonies, even though the Native Americans already lived there and had their own way of doing things. The two sides traded with each other, but there was also a lot of misunderstanding and conflict. Pocahontas, who was just a young girl at the time, tried to make the best of the situation by offering help and friendship. 1607, a colonist called John Smith was captured by Pocahontas' father. While being held a prisoner, Pocahontas taught him to speak the Algonquian language, and he taught her to speak English. 1613, the relationship between the colonists and Native Americans got worse, and even more fighting broke out because Pocahontas was a daughter of the chief. She was captured. 1614, while still being held captive, Pocahontas married a colonist named John Rolfe. At the time, women often had little say in who they married, so nobody can be sure exactly how Pocahontas felt about her new life. We do know that the marriage united both sides and brought peace for a while at least. In 1616, Pocahontas made the long journey to England with her husband. She was one of the first Native Americans to go there. John Rolfe returned to England to raise money for the colony and to show others what life was like in Jamestown. The other people Pocahontas met, including the king, wrongly thought Native Americans were wild and dangerous, but they quickly realized that Pocahontas was none of these things. Even when she was far from home, in what must have been a very daunting situation, Pocahontas helped to grow the understanding that all people, no matter their culture, deserved respect and kindness. Now, for the rest of the book, I am going to be showing you these. Feel free to take screenshots and read ahead just because the rest is so long. So here we go. Here's the first part. Gonna have to flip that. And this one is about Valentina Tereshkova, Reach for the Stars with the first woman in space. This next section is about Ada Lovelace. She calculated a future filled with wondrous machines. She predicted the age of computers, created a pattern or algorithm, and she revealed plans for a bigger and, her mind went one step further than Charles, and she realized the analytical engine would do more than just make calculations. Next is Saida Al-Hura. Next is Hatshepsut. She was a pharaoh and one of the most successful ever in ancient Egypt. Next is Josephine Baker. She put on a dazzling show for the world. She became famous and used her fame to make a stand against racism. Next is Mary Wollstonecraft. She was an author, and so was Mary Shelley. They both paved the way for female authors, and one of the books that Mary Shelley wrote was the famous Frankenstein. And Wollstonecraft wrote a book about women's rights and how they should be the same as men's. Bookshelf of Brilliance. How will you make history? Fantastically great words. Algorithm. A pattern of mathematical steps or instructions. Allies. People who are on the same page as someone, for example, fighting on the same side in a war. Cabinet ministers. The small group of people at the top of the British government. Celts. A name for people who lived in Europe from around the 15th century BC to the 1st century AD. Cosmonaut. The name for an astronaut from the Soviet Union or Russia. Evacuate. Get someone out of danger. Fugitive. Someone who has run away. Gestapo. Gestapo, the secret police force of Nazi Germany. Nazis, the political group that ruled Germany from 1933 to 1945, including during World War II. Orbit, a journey around something in space. Pharaoh, a king or ruler of ancient Egypt. Plundering, stealing. Racism, treating people differently based on the color of the skin, which is wrong. Rebel, protest about a fight or against laws or the people in charge. Revolution, a big change, such as when a government is overthrown or the political system of a country is unchanged. Segregation, keeping people separate. In the USA, segregation laws kept black and white people apart. Slave, someone who's owned by another person has to work in harsh conditions for no pay. Soviet Union, a country that existed from 1922 to 1991, made up of Russia and many other states that are now separate countries. Sultan, a king or ruler of a Muslim country. Suffragette, a woman who campaigned for women to be allowed to vote. Uprising, when a group of people in a country start fighting against the government. And that was fantastically great women who made history. This is a very long video, so thank you for tuning in until the very end. Don't forget to leave a comment and you might have a chance to win this book. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode and stay tuned for the next one. Thank you guys so much for supporting this whole journey that we're going on with this series. We're so proud of what we created so far, and we can't wait for you to see what's to come. Goodbye, everyone.